Hi, everyone, and welcome to special simulcast the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the grotto with Greg Hanna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
Batman. I'm doing awesome, dude. How are
Yes.
you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And I am excited to introduce our guest, Burt Ward, the original Robin from Batman. Burt, how are you? And I know Greg has some really fascinating questions, but it's great to have you back on the show, but finally for video. So good to see you, Burt.
It's great to see you, citizen. I've been doing great. I'll tell you something. We've talked about this before. I believe I was on your show around, was it 2016 or something like that?
Yes.
And I remember. And in any event, my wife and I, we operate this rescue, Gentle Giants Rescue, the largest giant breed dog rescue in the world. It's our charity. And we also, we make it's our nonprofit charity, but we also make pet food. We got dogs living to 30 years and cats living to 30 years. We take no money from this. But I wanted to tell you that 2 months ago, I got 3 amazing awards, 2 of them from the President of the United States. I got the President's Volunteer Service Award for 15 years of 15,500 dogs that we've saved over the last 30 years. And I also got the President's Lifetime Achievement Award for having created a special feeding and care program and our food that we have these animals living 30 years or longer. So those are great honors. And then, and this was a surprise, I didn't know about it, and I was invited to a special event. And also there was a representative from the United Nations that I received, both my wife individually and I received their humanitarian award from the United Nations. So we got 4 awards that, we never tried out for them. We never expected to be awarded anything. We just love animals and want them to live longer and healthier.
All right, good, Greg, with the first question for Burt.
Wow, I have so many questions, but Bert just answered so many of them so quickly. It was amazing. I loved it. But I was going to ask you about the dog stuff, a little bit, just because I love dogs so much. I have 2 dogs. I love them. My passion. If I could set every dog free, I would. It sounds like you're doing that for me, and I thank you so much for that. But how did you land the role on Robin, and what was that like? And just a quick couple minutes on that.
Sure. I was a young actor studying acting at UCLA and studying privately and selling real estate for my father on the weekend. Sold a house to a producer who I was able to convince to watch a scene that I created. And he said, "Hey, you're pretty good. I'll send you to an agent." Agent sent me out for the part. There was only 1,100 other young actors that tried out for the part, which is pretty steep competition. And I ended up with the part. And I did all 120 episodes, 2 Batman movies, and thousands and probably I think it's more like 7,000 personal appearances and signed 8.5 million autographs so far in my career.
Yeah, and you saw basically Burt that it was just like it's a game changer, right? Doing a show like that was a game changer to make such a big difference in people's lives now. And then that's where I know your big passion is. And Greg, Greg, you're a dog lover. I'm a dog lover as well, and I have a big dog, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But go ahead, Greg, with the next question.
My next question was going to be about how did you get started in this wonderful entrepreneurial venture of dog safety and savings and food and shelter and fundraising.
I'll tell you, what happened is 30 years ago, my wife and I moved to the Inland Empire. It's about an hour east of Los Angeles. We had a 3-year-old daughter, and we decided to get her a large dog. We said, okay, let's get her a Great Dane. And then we heard through research that a lot of Great Danes, in fact, all of the Great Danes that were in animal shelters were being put to death because dog breeds have rescues. There's a Chihuahua rescue, a German Shepherd rescue, and there's a Great Dane rescue. But the person who was operating that had passed away. And now all these beautiful dogs, when someone had to give them up, there was nobody to take them, nobody to rescue them. They went to the shelter, and within a few days, because there's no room in shelters, they're all put to death. So we started taking these Great Danes the first week of August of 1994. You're not going to believe this, but it's real. By the end of August, I had 102 full-size Great Danes in my house and 61 puppies under 7 weeks of age from litters that animal shelters said it's too dangerous, because there's disease in some of the shelters. You got to take this litter. My wife slept on our kitchen floor for 4 months because she would help the mother's nurse and then get that litter out. And then when the mother went outside to use the restroom, the next litter came in. And by the time she finished helping nurse 7 litters, they were ready to start the next 7 again. So and what happened is because these breeds, giant breeds, traditionally have the shortest lifespan. So when we would lose one, 7, 8 years old, it devastated us. And we said, maybe there's a way. If there's anything we could do, we're going to find a way to help them live longer. Well, we found out by the way you feed dogs. Now, remember, I've still today, 30 years later, I've got 50 dogs in my house. This is 30 years, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's no holidays off. There's no Christmas off. We feed 600 pounds of Gentle Giants here every day. But let me explain to you. So what happened was we created a food. When we went to create it, we said, let's get the best ingredients. And we went to pet food companies. Nobody wanted to make the food for us. Oh, those ingredients are too expensive. Oh, that's too, no, we all use the same food. We just, the same kind of ingredients. We just make it under different names. I said, no, we don't want that. And we ended up getting a food. And the reason our dogs and people and by the way, I think we have about 500,000 dogs eating our food every day in the United States, 500,000. And they're eating a food that has no pesticides, no insecticides, no genetically modified organisms in the food. And I must tell you something, the number one killer of dogs and cats in America is cancer. Okay. And they get the cancer from having genetically modified organisms because food is traditionally sprayed, plants that are growing. You see the crop dusters dropping poisons on them. And then, it kills the bugs, but it penetrates the plant. And then your dog or cat eats some of those ingredients and comes down with cancer. So we have all non-GMO ingredients. Took us 1.5 years just to be able to locate it because only 2% of the food supply in our country is non-GMO. That includes for humans. In other words, almost everything we eat, unless you get organic and non-GMO, can have pesticides in it. So that was one thing. The other thing is, if you're feeding your dog right now a food, let's say you're feeding a kibble. People say, well, what's so different about your food? I tell them, pick up a few kibbles, rub on your fingers, put those kibbles down and rub your fingers together. You're going to feel a slightly greasy feeling. Okay, you know what that is? That's animal fat that was sprayed onto the food and filling the food with animal fat because animal fat confuses animals' brains, dogs and cats, to believe they're hungrier than they are, to make them eat more pet food, to make you buy more pet food.
That's crazy.
But you're clogging their arteries and clogging their intestines.
That's a great message.
Oh my God. That's the reason our animals are living longer.
All right. So Greg has the question that hits everyone on the head. This is the question that you have to really pay attention to, Bert. Go ahead with this question. He asked every celebrity this question, and it's amazing the answers we get.
And I can't wait to ask you, Bert. So here we go. Tell me, Bert, what do you feel is the most important thing in life that you've ever learned?
Okay, I'll tell you. Okay, I want to tell you the 3 essentials to happiness. Wouldn't you agree that happiness is probably the most valuable thing in life? Certainly your health, but happiness. And here are the 3 essentials to happiness. Someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. Those are the 3 essentials to happiness.
Amen.
I love it. Bert, best place we can find info on you and go. Where can we go, Bert?
Oh, please go to if you have a dog, go to gentlegiantsdogfood.com. If you have a cat, go to gentlegiantscatfood.com. And if you want to go to our store, it's gentlegiantspetproducts.com. Again, we take no salary, but this is all about helping animals live longer. And when the animals live longer, their pet parents can live longer as well.
My guest today is Dr. Neal Barnard. And Dr. Neal, thanks for stopping by. And I always wanted to have doctor in my name for a PhD when I was a teacher, but I never had that opportunity. But thanks for stopping by. And we're going to talk about your new book Power Foods Diet, the breakthrough plan that traps, tames, and burns calories for easy and permanent weight loss. Dr. Neal, thanks for stopping by.
It's great to be with you today.
You know, what made you want to do this? Kind of tell us your background.
Well, we have been doing research here. I'm in Washington, D.C. here, and we've been doing research on healthy diets for a long time, but we've been focusing on things like diabetes, cholesterol, cancer prevention. But what we've discovered is that for many of these things, if we can control weight, if we can trim off unwanted weight, we really get our health into a much better place. And we have now discovered that there's an approach to weight loss that's so much easier than what people have been doing. Researchers at Harvard discovered that the more people eat of certain specific foods, the more weight they lose. So our team put this to the test and found out what is it that these foods are doing. And what they do is they tame your appetite so that you just feel satisfied before you've overdone it. Or in some cases, they trap calories in your digestive tract so that you can't absorb them at all. And there are also some that boost your metabolism. And I thought, great, instead of tiny little portions, let's eat the foods that take off the weight. And that's what we've been doing with the Power Foods diet.
That's really interesting. You know, and I know when we eat things that are not really good for us, first of all, we want to eat more of them. And secondly, we don't feel good after we eat them, especially the older we get, because our digestion systems change the older we get. So basically, these foods, coming up with these power foods, is going to make it so that you're going to feel full, not like having to have 6 tiny meals a day and make sure you have to have a chef prep to do all the different things. You're making it more easier, right?
And some of the foods are just everyday foods that everybody knows about, but we really don't end up putting them in our grocery cart very much. I'll give you an example. At Harvard, the #1 food they found for weight loss was the humble, unassuming blueberry. I think, blueberries, what's that about? How can blueberries do this? Well, the blue color comes from what are called anthocyanins. That's the blue pigment, and they tend to be a metabolism booster. So, okay, so let's say you like blueberries. What we have done then is we thought, let's take another power food, cinnamon. Cinnamon, ginger, capsaicins, and hot peppers, these are all power foods as well. They boost the metabolism. So let's take French toast, make it with a blueberry syrup, put on some cinnamon. And what we're doing is we're building power foods into foods that everybody loves. And so French toast is just one example, but you could do it with a vegetable soup or something like that. You could do it with a pasta that you're choosing in the evening. Let's top it with the power foods so that you can eat. You don't have to limit carbs. You do not have to limit calories intentionally because the diet foods are going to do that for you. Now, it's not just blueberries, cruciferous vegetables, green leafy vegetables, certain melons, citrus fruits will do it, beans will do it. There's a whole number of foods, and the whole point of power foods is let's put them to work. Let's enjoy the ride.
So I love the fact is like, and I don't know how many of the fruits are power foods, but like, you know, when you get a good breakfast where you have all these fruits, it feels like, I don't know what it is that's all cut up, prepared for you. It feels great. It just feels great when you eat it. It's like, you know what? I feel satisfied when I eat fruit. And are there other power foods, just blueberries on that?
Oh, there's a huge number of them. For example, when you open up the Power Foods diet, in fact, I have to say when we put out this book, I worked with Dustin Harder, who is the recipe developer, and Lindsay Nixon. And Dustin did all the food photography. And when he sent me all these food photographs, I said, Dustin, that's about 2 inches away from food porn. What are you doing here with all these luxurious foods? But that's kind of the idea, is that you can really enjoy eating again. So for example, let's say you look at your menu and it might be French toast with blueberry syrup, wild blueberry muffins, a veggie lentil soup, a mango dal, a pasta arrabbiata. Arrabbiata is Italian for angry, but for a chef, it means mildly spicy. Or we've got desserts like a triple berry sorbet or wild blueberry pops or carrot cake. Or I think we got brownies where if you got, let's say you got a sweet tooth, I'm going to satisfy it with the power ingredients that improve your metabolism, but are also tasty. So it makes it really simple.
I think it's fantastic. And I guess the whole goal is you don't want to have this boring diet for people, right? That's one of the other reasons you wrote the book, right?
If I gave you a boring diet, you would quit. If I told you you could only eat 800 calories a day, you would quit. You'd be ready to eat the sofa by Wednesday. If I told you you can never eat carbs and you say to me, wait a minute, I can never have an orange. I can never have a piece of bread. I can't have pasta. I can never have a plate of mashed potatoes again for the rest of my life. You would quit. So the point of this is to say, let's look at the foods that really work for you the most. And again, they've got to tame your appetite. Now, this doesn't mean that your appetite is shut off. What it means is if I were to give you a Power Foods meal, let's say it's my Southwest chili, for example, and then I'm going to compare it to a regular chili. And I figure, okay, stop when you're full. At the point that you are full with my Power Foods Southwest chili, it's about 200 calories less than what it would take to fill you up with another kind. And part of this is an amazing thing. You know, the GLP-1 drugs like Wegovy or Ozempic, what they are doing is they're trying to treat, it's a synthetic form of GLP-1, which goes to the brain, turns on your appetite. Your body will make GLP-1 naturally if you eat the right foods. So what I'm saying is, yes, you could go to the store and get Wegovy for 15,000 and change per year, but instead, certain foods will trigger a natural GLP-1 release for you. That's why we call them power foods. So as a doctor and as a researcher, we've looked at thousands of patients and put it to the test. And we found that there is one way to really help people tackle not just their weight problems, but deal with their cholesterol issues, their diabetes issues, and that's to use the foods that have the real health power. You've experienced this in your own life, is that there's certain foods that you might love, but they just don't love you back.
No, they don't anymore. And then it's like when you do, you kick yourself, but and I don't like that. So, and it's like, okay, even like candies now, I'm 51. And like I have the sweet tooth for those candies that are just empty calories and you just eat them. Now I don't even like them in my digestive system. Once I started doing yoga, I can tell what foods are good for my digestion and which ones are not. And because of yoga, my digestion system has changed. So I see you talked about exercise, an important part of it as well. DDPY yoga is my favorite. It's Diamond Dallas Page's yoga is a resistance training yoga that you can just do. And it's like absolutely changed my life. Add that with intermittent fasting and eating the right foods. And you feel a lot more energy and not down. And it really helps the brain and everything.
I'm so glad that you mentioned this about the physical activity part, because there are a lot of people who feel like, I'm too sluggish. I don't feel like moving. Going to the gym is not a possibility. Or there are people for whom that just really isn't a realistic possibility due to a disability or excessive overweight. What we have found is that when you eat the right foods, as the weight starts to come off because of the power foods, you're more able to exercise. Your energy is better. Your digestion is better. Because of these. Yeah. And then of course, what started us off on this in the first place was diabetes. For people who have high blood sugars, we have found that you don't have to worry so much about the carbohydrate that you're eating, which is what everybody worries about. Instead, what we've discovered is that power foods will boost insulin sensitivity in your body, so that people actually can eat foods that they enjoy. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that you should be eating a lot of really junk food. That's not the idea. The idea is to eat healthful foods, but make them in the way that they kind of tickle your taste buds and that your body reacts really well. Let's get that energy. Let's get your glucose down. Let's get your cholesterol down to where you want to be. Let's make it so that your doctor says, you are doing something great. But you know what's the most important thing of all? To get into a healthy way that you inspire the people around you to want to be healthy too, because that way you're going to save their life. You're going to make them healthier.
I think it's fantastic. And like, it gets me excited. And then when I had the power outage, oh my goodness, I literally was fast food joint and I felt crap. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get back into this. And when we do work out and we do weight resisting training, the scale is not the place. It's to look at your body in the mirror. Wouldn't you agree? That's another part is important in looking at when you're in diets. It's not always the weight, it's your size.
Well, let me take a different view on it, because once in a while I'll meet with somebody and they say, I've been doing this for a week or so and I haven't really lost weight yet. I have to say, with the power food diet approach, if the scale has not changed, then it's not working. So I'm going to be honest with you. If let's say you're weighing a certain amount and it's not changing, then something is wrong. So we want to go in, and I do have a troubleshooting part in the power foods diet, and it's invariably something that a person thought was healthy that they are increasing a lot, but is not a power food at all. So yeah, I want to see that scale move. And I want to see it move big time. You'll see people in here who have lost 100 pounds, more than 100 pounds. The power foods are weight loss foods. Let me give you an example of a food people think is healthy that isn't: salmon. People go to the store, they pick up salmon, and it's wild caught salmon, and they think, why am I, not losing weight? When people eat a lot of salmon, their weight loss just stops cold. Now, why would that be? It's good fat, right? Here's the issue. All fats, good fats, bad fats, have 9 calories per gram. That's more than twice the calories in carbohydrate. And if it's Atlantic salmon, it's 40% fat. If it's Chinook salmon, it's 52% fat. So unfortunately, although it may be a better quality of fat than you'll get in a steak, it's still so much fat that it stops weight loss. I'll give you another example: coconut oil. Coconut oil is marketed as a healthy food. It's really so saturated. You could make a candle out of it or wax your shoes with it. But it's unfortunately going to stop people from losing weight. I'll give you a third example, and I'm going to break your heart with this one. All the fruits are great, except the avocado tastes wonderful. And if you're already skinny, I would say fine. But if you're trying to lose weight, there is so much fat in an avocado that it's going to cause people to have trouble losing weight. So anyway, we look for those foods. Now, I don't say you can never have another avocado. I wouldn't say that. But I would say if you want to really power ahead, I would make sure that the foods that you're eating are the not so fatty choices. I mentioned berries, but things like apples, oranges, a mango, a papaya. And mango or papaya get their orange color from beta carotene. Beta carotene is a power food. Beta carotene is an antioxidant that doesn't just reduce cancer risk, but it also, according to the best research we have, facilitates weight loss as well.
And are we seeing in our country, we're just not having enough exercise? People are not exercising enough?
People are not exercising enough, but let me be really clear. In our research studies, when we put the diets to work to see if a power food works, I do something that you should not do at home. I ask our people not to change their exercise during a research study because I'm testing the food. I want to see what the food will do. So I don't want a person running a marathon because they're going to lose weight no matter what they're eating. So what I want to do if a person does not exercise or cannot exercise due to disability or some other reason, they will still lose weight. That said, let's get the foods together and let's lace up our sneakers. Now, I'm a big runner as well. I prefer, what I like to do is every other day I go out for about a 3-mile run, sometimes 5, sometimes like that. That's what makes me feel really good. But if you don't do that or can't do that or just don't feel like doing that, the power foods still work. If they are not working, if the diet you're working is not, if the diet you're eating is not causing weight loss, then we could tune it up. What we're going to tune it up is choosing the power foods. I mentioned berries. They're all great, but there's a whole bunch of others. The cruciferous vegetable group, that's broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Don't douse them with Velveeta. That's what a lot of people do. Don't do that. The green leafy vegetables more broadly, spinach, asparagus, fine. The melon group, take a cantaloupe or take a watermelon, cut it up in chunks, put it in a glass bowl, leave it in your refrigerator. That way, when you open that door, you're going to see a healthy snack in there. Any kind of bean dish is great. So if you make a chili, don't make it with ground beef, make it with black beans or pinto beans. That's going to be your better choice because those are high in fiber. Meat doesn't have the fiber at all. So the whole point is, let's use these power foods. I mentioned spices. Some people have experienced this with ginger, or they experience it with cinnamon, where we see substantial weight loss. A randomized trial of more than 100 people showed about a 7.5-pound weight loss from cinnamon in 16 weeks time. They had about a teaspoon a day. You don't have to have that much. You can use less. People do it with the capsaicinoids in hot foods. The whole point is to choose the ones you like.
Hi, Neil. Yeah, great to be with you again. And I'm so excited about our guest, Hannah Campbell. And she is huge inspiration because Hannah is just about to release her second book with us, with Storehouse Media Group. We published. And Hannah, you just graduated high school, right?
Wow.
I did, actually, just last
Yes.
week.
And congratulations on that,
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, so by the time she graduated high school, she was an author of multiple books. And to me, it's just, it just, it's so inspirational. And that, hey, if you want to write a book, go for it. People want to say it their whole life, but look at Hannah. So yay, Hannah. There you go. Your inspiration saying you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such an amazing journey, and Sherry was a big help. I know it was about 2 years ago that we started talking about my first book and getting it out there, and it's just been a crazy journey since then.
Oh,
It
wow.
has.
Wow. I'm sure I can't believe in high school writing her first book.
I know. I know. It's crazy. Her first book is I made butcher, but it's Eunoia, right?
Yep,
Yeah, that was the first release, and the second one was Metanoia.
yep.
And so I think it's just a really good story of why you started writing books at such a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. It first began when I was in 8th grade, and I didn't really love writing, but I loved reading. And I was in this special reading class, and I had a teacher that wanted all of us to submit to a scholastic national competition where you had to write 2 pages of a fantasy story. And fantasy was also not a genre that I was interested in at the time, but we all ended up writing something, submitting it, and then a few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail saying that I was chosen as one of the finalists. And then about another couple weeks, I got a package in the mail and I was fourth in the nation. And that's when I had that moment of just, wow, I could actually write something, and it could be something that people are interested in reading and hearing the story behind it. So then I had a couple ideas of books, but it wasn't anything I was serious about pursuing. It was just, oh, this would be such a cool book. I'll write it down. And then it went nowhere until January of 2021. I just turned 15 and COVID had shut down school. We were doing everything online. I had so much time during my days, and I just had this book idea that I had gotten just randomly one day, and I decided, why not put this time to good use and write a book?
Holy
Yeah.
cow. And what did your parents say about it? You want to
They
write
were
it?
kind of like, oh, that's so nice. Yeah, like go write your book. Like, I don't think they knew how serious about it I was until about 5 months later. I'm like, okay, I'm done with it. Like, let's get an editor now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. 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 It was and when she came, when we learned, and when I heard her say she was a junior, and I thought, oh wow, that's really good. Like a junior in college is writing a book. She's like, no, in high school. And I'm like, what? Wow. Yeah, it was super exciting that she came. So tell us what Yanoi is about.
It's a historical fiction. It's inspired by the books Anne of Green Gables and Little Women. And it's kind of this coming of age story where the main character's learning about what she wants in life, because it's set in 1894, and that was a time period where marriage was the only choice. You didn't really go to college, that was very uncommon for women. And once you reached a certain age, it was time to go find a suitable husband. So the book's about her navigating through life and seeing how her older sister is looking for a husband. They go to the city, they join the engagement season, they go to soirees, and she finally realizes that this isn't what she wants. She wants some other alternative. She wants to go west, she wants to travel. Basically, she wants a different life than what the typical society standards are. And she ends up realizing that her sister, who she's always felt indifferent to, really isn't that different to her and can be someone that she relates to.
It's unbelievable that you picking something to write like that. Pretty deep, right? Deep topic.
Yeah, I felt like, at least in my opinion, that all authors kind of have to draw from life on some things. Of course, you have to fictionalize the story a little bit just for the readers, but you really have to draw from your own imagination. If you just go out in the world, you see how people interact with each other, and you have to read between the lines. And I want to put a lot of that into the book. I wanted the characters not to be, oh, they go through the climax and then after everything's fine. I wanted them to be more human. to make it seem like you're actually looking at someone and they're telling you this story.
Well, did you ever think about writing under a pseudonym?
I thought about it. My author name is my full name, Hannah Bree Campbell. And for a while there, I wanted to just go by Hannah Bree because I feel like middle names, they're so beautiful. Everyone has a beautiful middle name, but you never hear them. And then it was very last minute that I decided I wanted my full name to be in there because I was like, oh, it has such a nice ring to it. Why not just
I
add on
love it.
that last name?
Yeah, I love that middle name. It just kind of flows like music, you know? So,
So, okay, go ahead.
no, I was going to ask you, how did publishing your first book, how did it change the process of you writing?
The first book was not planned at all. Everything was in the moment written. I would just go up to my room in between my Zoom classes, maybe write for an hour, and I knew where I wanted the story to start and end, but the rest of it was completely up to imagination. And then the second book is when I actually wanted to plan some stuff out, think of scene ideas versus just winging it like I did the first.
Yeah, the winging it versus, so you really put some different thought into it. Is it from the editing process back and forth with Storehouse that you kind of said, oh, now I'm going to look more into what I'm doing when I'm writing the first time, how I'm organizing everything in my writing?
Yeah, absolutely. I had during the editing process just a lot of time, and I started thinking about, wow, okay, maybe planning out some stuff would make it a hint of a bit easier.
Definitely.
Outlines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, me, I love to write. It's therapeutic. And I find when I talk to other authors, especially if it's a story, they're, what them finally getting it out is good. What about you? Does writing energize you? Does it exhaust you? How does that make you feel overall?
It definitely can get exhausting at times, especially if you're looking at a computer screen for 5+ hours a day, or just you keep going through scenes over and over again. You feel like something's missing. But most times it's about getting into that kind of writer mindset. And that's energizing in itself because you start to think about where's this book going to go and how many people is it going to touch just through words on a page.
And that's so important. If you read the first book, should you read the first book before buying the second book once your second book comes out?
Absolutely. The second book, I will say, begins at the plot twist at the end of the first book. So picking it up at the second book, you might be a little confused about what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you're on social media, and how can people interact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on all social media platforms under Hannah B. Campbell. And I love it when readers comment on some of my posts or even message me asking questions. Actually, the other day I had someone, they saw one of my videos I created about my book and they messaged me asking, what are some things that help me get into the writing mindset and what's it like actually being an author? And I was more than happy to respond to all the questions and just help them out.
See what an inspiration you are.
Totally. She is totally. Now, my question is, you started a little bit to talk about the experience with Storehouse Media Group. Can you kind of go into deeper detail of how working with Sherry and Storehouse's team?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I contacted Sherry, I believe in August 2022. I was 16 at the time, and I had just moved to Florida. I used to live in Maryland, and that's where I wrote the first book. So it was really this shift from I had a publisher in Maryland that I was looking at, and it just wasn't a right fit. And then I found Sherry and Storehouse really helped just get this book off the back burner and really put it into the light. I remember me and Sherry were on the phone and she was like, oh, like this is so amazing. And I was like, yeah, I'm 16, by the way. Like, if that changes anything.
Yeah, it
But,
just kind of blew me away. It was like, wow. I
but
was
yeah,
so impressed with her from the very beginning. I mean, I had no idea I was talking to a 16-year-old in the beginning, and because she's so mature.
Yeah.
And uh And so as I found out I'm like, junior in high school, it just dawned on me, it wasn't college, it was high school. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then she told me she was working on the second book. And as we were, taking her first book to publish, she was like, working on it, I think halfway done or in editing or something like that. And I'm like, wow. So, I know she's got more planned that I'd love for her to share with listeners and viewers, and let her tell what are you working on now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually almost finished with the third book in the series. I kind of the same with the first book. As soon as it was about to be published, I started working on the second book. As soon as that was about to be published, I started working on the third book just to kind of help the timelines match up. So the third book, I only have about 20,000 words left, and I hope to get it finished before August and then start the editing process on that. And then while that's in editing, I'm starting my fourth book that's outside the series.
And it sounds like you're going Storehouse every time. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
you see, Sherry, that most people after they publish you with you once, they don't leave, and you constantly are publishing them, right? Because they want to
Yeah,
write their
we
whole life.
have a lot of repeats. That's right. That's right.
Um,
It's great because you develop these wonderful relationships, and from our perspective, and you kind of get to know each other and how the other works, and so that's always a really good thing, is knowing each other and how you work and how the process goes.
Jesse, thanks for stopping by. Former professional soccer player, doing so many work in ministries, but we can talk about today's topic, mental health and sports, because that's what you went through in your journey when you were suffering after your professional career and you didn't know what to turn to, and you were dealing with depression, lot suicidal ideation, and then you overcame all that, but now you're really trying to give back in that area, right?
Neil, thank you so much. Congratulations too on your podcast. I know worldwide is so popular. People appreciate you because you bring inspiration, you're authentic, and you're making a difference. I'm honored to be with you today. And yes, my story includes tragedy. My childhood dream was to play professional sports. And after I graduated from Dartmouth, where, we won Ivy League titles, and then I played overseas, and the dream came true, and then tragically the dream was crushed. And I was sick overseas, fighting for my life for 1 year, took 10 years to fully recover. All this was side effects of a medication designed to protect me. It was killing me. And then my career was over, and I didn't find hope until I lost it. And what I discovered in that tragedy is sometimes the very best things in life happen at the very lowest points. And yes, my faith in God, the God of hope, that transformed my life. And I gotten involved in ministry now serving as a pastor in Seattle, also chaplain of Seattle Sounders. And it's a passion for me when you talk about the intersection between athletes and mental health. And what's true about sports, it's a picture of life. It's relevant to all of us. And people don't win the gold medal in the Olympics without first winning the battle of the mind. We don't win the championship on the field without winning the battle of the mind. And all of us have that between our ears that we're trying to sort through. And one encouragement I want to give today that's practical, there's a difference between distress and eustress. Eustress is the good stress. It creates adrenaline, motivation. We're going, we're alive, we're alert. The distress is unhelpful, what weighs us down, discouragement and despair. We're discouraged and we don't even know what to do with it. Well, sometimes we have first thoughts that come into our mind that bring distress, not eustress. And I call this habit cultivating the power of the second thought. The power of the second thought has 3 steps. First, you recognize what you're thinking about. Start thinking about what you're thinking about. The first thought might be negative. You can't control the first thought that comes in. It could be selfish. It could be mean. You don't want it. It's not good for you. So the second step is reject it. Reject the negative first thought. Say, not in my house. I'm not going to harbor, believe, or entertain that. And then the third is to replace it. Replace it with a positive, intentional second thought. And as you do that, mental health is going to come. Your thinking is going to be sound. And when your thoughts are sound, it leads to different attitudes and words and responses. For athletes, if you just make a mistake, you can't dwell on that. You can't keep replaying the old tape. You've got to say with an intentional second thought, right now, new start. and you're blocking out that negative experience from taking over the entire game. Well, that's true for all of us. Beginning of the day, middle of the day, the power of a second thought, and intentionally replace it. For me, I would choose sometimes a Bible verse like God is love, Jesus is with me. That's what speaks to me and inspires me. For you, it might be a verse from a song, or it could be a phrase someone said to you that's meaningful. Choose the power of the second thought ahead of time, so you have a plan, and then you're going to make good decisions because your mind's going in the right direction. So the internal story, Neil, often is what people don't see. They see the outside story, but it all begins on the inside. And when you're healthy on the inside, there's going to be fruit on the outside. And we are the ones who really make the choices during the day, like an air traffic controller at the airport, deciding what lands and what doesn't land. We get that choice. I was a goalkeeper on the field, and in my mind, I went into goalkeeper mode. Which shots can't stick? They can't hit the back of the net. And then what am I going to say yes to? And all of us are making those decisions. I love this phrase, just choose hope. Hope is available. Hope is a choice. Hope is habitual. You can cultivate habits to increase hope. And ultimately, there's an indestructible hope that's greater than our challenges.
No, it's very interesting you talk about this. And this is something I've been studying and learning about mindset coaching and mindset. And I've gone through a lot of self-hypnosis at night with the law of attraction, but as rooms with involving God. Daraj Global is very big about this, especially with Jesus and different things and the way there was I forget the author back in the 1900s that talked about, baptizing events when bad things happen. I forget her name. I'll have to send you, but it really involves the law of attraction and God and Jesus. People don't talk about that. Let's bring this up. There's a lot of spirituality people out there, but they don't want to mention God, Jesus, when it involves the law of attraction. And it seems like the successful Christians really have a great mindset. They're not bringing the negative points in their lives. They're keeping things so positive, and that's why they're so successful.
It's so practical. The Bible says, think about whatever's true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. What a great list. And when we make a mistake, that doesn't define us. It's not the end of the story. We can't live in the past, but we can learn from the past. And I like to say hope is first received. And to do that, we make some hope shifts. I mean, a lot of times for me, I was strong, independent. I wasn't open to receiving hope, receiving love. I didn't come to know Jesus until college at Dartmouth when a professor assigned the Bible. So it's surprising how it plays out in our lives. It's not rules and rituals and religion. This is a relationship and very practical. And when you live out your faith, you love God and you love people with all your mind, and including you love people as you love yourself. So don't get too down on yourself. Don't be too full of yourself. I had a performance-based identity, and if I performed well in school and sports, I was, soaring. And then if I didn't perform well, I was so down on myself. Roller coaster ride, can't have that. So I had to shift. It's like I have an identity. What I do is not who I am. It doesn't define me. And so I have an identity that's secure now. I know I'm loved. And because of that, now I can enjoy, sports. I can enjoy my job, but it's not my idol. It doesn't, say everything about me. And that's freedom ultimately. And that's a healthy shift. So hope, you decide what you put your hope in, and your hope is only as strong as the one in whom you trust. So if you trust someone that's not reliable, your hope is going to get crushed. And where are you going to put that anchor? And I just realized that, okay, God's faithful. I can trust him. You have to discern which people you can trust, what's true and what's not true. And when you make those hope choices, now you're really in a position where hope is going to increase. And I don't think that God ever runs out of hope. I don't think any of us need to stay in a cave of despair. I came out of that situation where literally I was battling for my mind, my mental health. My body took 10 years to fully recover. I had a heartbeat that had atrial flutter and abnormal rhythms and so many problems with my heart. But I just ran my first marathon. And I thank God for the healing. It was for clean water for kids in Africa. My own son came and ran next to me the last 3 miles. But every step I'm grateful for. Life is a gift. Every day I'm grateful for. I don't take it for granted, and I'm intentionally thankful. I call it a gritty gratitude. If you're feeling down, start serving people and start thanking people. As you thank people and you thank God, I would come up with a list. 10 things. This is what I'm thankful for. And with those 10 things,
It'll make you feel better.
everything shifts when you're grateful.
It,
And
it,
that's
may,
really gratitude.
it completely will make you feel better. Let's talk about, performance-based athletes and the successful performance-based athletes. It's all mindset. So the most successful athletes in the world, if you would have had that mindset, Jesse, like using God on the field to the level and professional and not gotten to that point, where do you think you would end up as a pro athlete if you really had things right now?
It's learned. So much of what we're talking about today, mental health, I didn't learn it in the classroom. I learned it because I went through a trial. But yes, then you can go back and apply it. And what they did in terms of research with top professional athletes is they found the upper echelon. This was true in tennis. The top 5 out of the top 25. The top 5, the difference is not ultimately their sleep or their nutrition. Their difference is not in the outward. It's in the inward and the thinking. Wow. And what they found is that they can bounce back quickly and they stay positive. So they continue during the match to say, I'm grateful. I get to play today. This is the sport I love. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to enjoy this competition. This person's bringing out the best in me. There's all kinds of challenges for an athlete during the game. There's the pressure you put on yourself. There's a bad call by the ref. There's the other team. There's the fans. I mean, everything's flying at you. There's bait everywhere. And for all of us, there's bait that we can take. But when we say no, and then on the other side, a yes, because every time you say no to something, it opens the door in our lives for saying yes to something else, and make room for God, make room for hope, make room for gratitude. As you do that, it's a different trajectory. A lot of times we end up in the wrong spot because we're 1 degree off. And 1 degree off doesn't sound like a lot at the start, but then over time and travel, 1 degree off, if you think you're heading to Hawaii and going to land there, you realize now I'm going to land in the ocean. I'm 1 degree off. So we go back and we realize this is where I was 1 degree off. We make that hope shift, which is life-giving. And it's true for me with athletics. It's true also just as a parent, in my marriage, in my work I do. I'm always, that renewing of the mind is so helpful.
And as a chaplain, how much are you helping these young players, even though they're professional athletes, not make the mistakes you made and teach them?
Absolutely. That's the joy, both now in the chaplain role and even as a parent. I know the choices I made. I know there's a better way, and I can coach them along with that. I talk to the players sometimes about the joy of being able to put on a Sounders jersey, the joy of being able to play with teammates that, fans that are cheering you on, the joy of being healthy. Like, enjoy this, because there's a bell-shaped curve for athletes. And if they're not alert enough, they're going to be flat. It's going to take them 30 minutes to really be having that competitive edge. So you don't want to go into a game a little low energy for whatever reason. You also don't want to put too much pressure on yourself and be kind of white knuckled. And now it's paralysis by analysis. We all do this. We overthink, and what if this happens? What if this happens? You want to be in the zone, and that's the joy right there. And then once they start to have that habit on the field, it carries over off the field as well. The two are connected. And when you give people habits, when you empower them, equip them, encourage them, now they start to realize that worked for soccer. That also works, in conflict with my wife, or that also works when my kids are giving me some attitude, and I can choose my reaction. I can choose my second thought. And now I'm proactive. Now I'm not victim mentality, because there's some things no one can take away from you. Your attitude, your work effort, right? Your prayers, your gratitude. Like, there's a lot of things in life, the most important stuff that no one can take away from you. So don't give those hope thieves too much power. Don't let them come into your house and hang out there. Set that limit, and then guard what's most important.
And I'm excited to welcome New York Times bestselling author Joanna Ho. How are you doing? And we're going to talk about your latest book, We Who Produce Pearls, an anthem for Asian America. How are you, Joanna?
Well, I'm great. Thanks for having me on today.
Talk about why you wanted to become an author. What was the whole motivation for you?
Sure. So my background is in education. I was a teacher and a vice principal. I've always been very passionate about inclusivity and equity. And so when I had children, I was looking for books for my kids. I used to also teach English.
Okay.
And that's when I started to realize actually that there is such a dearth of representation and inclusion, not only of Asian kids in children's literature, but all kids of color in general. So I think at a very high level, I have a very strong desire for my own kids, but for all kids to be able to see themselves and to see others in stories. And so felt really inspired to try to write my own, to add just one more voice to what has become like a rising wave of authors and storytellers telling stories that we never got to see when we were children.
How do you think you became that New York Times bestselling author? It didn't happen overnight, right? Or maybe you have an overnight story.
No, I wish I did, but I'm very grateful for the journey. I wrote and wrote and wrote. I was very fortunate after a few years to sign with a wonderful agent, and then it took me almost 2 years to sell. It took us almost 2 years to sell my first story,
Wow.
and that story became like an instant New York Times bestseller. And I just think that it is blood, sweat, tears. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of rejection. And then ultimately, there's so much that was out of my hands. It's readers, it's teachers, it's booksellers really taking stories and sharing them, outside of what the machine of industry is doing.
Isn't it crazy that so many people might have rejected you, and then look at you now?
Yeah, I know. I sometimes I go back and I look at the rejection letters, and it's hard to imagine that this is what I'd be doing now.
Well, the most successful people, and again, you're part of a special club, New York Times. And there is that special club, and then your success as a published author. A lot of people don't want to take that rejection. They don't want to go through that stuff. They give up, or they say, okay, I'm just going to just do this. And you just kept grinding. And that's very important. And I agree about the misrepresentation of children's books. And hey, is this somebody that's me?
Right.
I taught, I was a former teacher myself. I don't know if you knew my background, and I taught X amount of years before I went back into, I guess, the business world as an entrepreneur, pro wrestler turned teacher, turned entrepreneur, turned maybe back to pro wrestling again, but also still the entrepreneur. But in that journey, they just they're dying for education. People of color are dying to have to be represented right. They're dying to get the best education possible because they know education's their only way out.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why, that we don't have those. I mean, it's got to be people like you to go out there and say, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, they think there's a lot of people who are collectively lifting our voices in different ways to fight for not just like representation and inclusivity, but just to have a greater voice in shifting the systems and the ways that we do things.
The story, the narrative, all those different things.
Yeah.
So which book was the one that made you a New York Times bestselling author? Then we'll get to your last book.
The first one was Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. That was the first one that was published. And then the companion to that book, Eyes That Speak to the Stars, was also a New York Times bestseller. So I feel very grateful to readers and to those who picked up the book and to share it and have shared it with others.
Well, your book is beautiful, the current one. The illustrations, unbelievable. And again, in a story about Asian America. How much research did you put into writing this book?
I researched for over a year before I even sat down to start writing it. And, part of the reason for that is because we don't learn anything about very, very, very little about Asians in America, Asians in our ancestral homelands. Like maybe people can say like Chinese exclusion or Japanese internment, but other than that, it's almost nothing for the majority of us. And so I had to sort of make up some of so much of that knowledge. So I did so much research between like interviews, between reading like a billion books and watching documentaries. And this was also in the pandemic, so nobody was traveling, no one was going anywhere. So a lot was just whatever I could do at home. And then from there is where the book really, the idea was born.
No, and you think about specifically enough why there's not enough in the history books. There's like a paragraph, right? Especially fourth graders, third graders reading it. And you had to look in the eyes of how you could explain this to children. That's the exciting part, right? Of being able to talk about Asian Americans, right?
Yeah, very much so. So taking all that research and then, it's like pages and pages and pages and trying to figure out how to turn all of that research, a lot of it, which is quite painful history, a lot of it, which is really empowering and inspiring, but how do you turn that into a book in 500 words? So what I did was I organized the research. It was really important to me. One of the highlights or things that came up for me in the research is that there is a lot of shared and parallel experience across the Asian diaspora when in our ancestral homelands, but also when we came to the United States. And so I wanted to capture that for readers so that people come away knowing, we are a very diverse group, but we also have so many shared points that should be things that help us come together in greater solidarity. So when I organize my notes, I tried to make sure that every page captured a wide breadth of that history. And then every page itself is inspired by the history, or refers directly to some points in history for across many of our different groups.
So let's think about, what exciting thing you have to read the book for sure, but what thing was the most surprising in your historical research of Asian Americans?
I think one of the most big surprises, I knew that our people have been oppressed, that there's been great injustice. What I didn't know is that, like, across the board, Asians have always stood up and spoken out, have fought back against injustice, have really tried to fight for our own rights and our liberation. And the narratives of Asians in the US is so often that we're quiet, that we're meek, that we're submissive, and and easily erased, which is what's happened to us. And so I didn't know that we really have used our power and our voices all the time. These are not narratives or stories that I'd heard before. So many examples, whether we're talking about people who are coming over as enslaved people or in forced indentured servitude, who like mutinied on ships and tried to return home, or people who use the court system, or people who worked in solidarity, as laborers to fight for their rights and for higher wages or for better living conditions. There are so many examples of stories like this that I just never knew.
No, you definitely, and you found out about them, but it's interesting to talk about that, to know people that stand up for their rights, because again, rights are, we hear more in the civil rights movement and different things, but we don't hear about Asian Americans and certain types of things in the process. And what types of discriminations do you feel happened to Asian Americans? We know all about, during World War II for sure, but what other ones did you spot?
I mean, there's so many, like whether it's immigration, whether it's like going and the things that haven't happened in our homelands where, with so much colonization, people taking resources, forcing people, changing lives, and forcing, systems such that like people were forced to leave to look for better lives elsewhere. Here, like lots of anti-Asian immigration laws. There were a lot of mob violence, like the largest mass lynching in United States history. It was in Chinese communities where Asian people were murdered, en masse. There are lots of examples of labor laws that were really unfair, of redlining, where Asian people were not allowed to go to school or to live in communities where there were white people. I mean, you could go on and on and on about all of these different types of discriminations and like unjust laws that have been and continue to be fought against.
And you wouldn't think that. You wouldn't think that because it's not in the history books, and you wouldn't think that because of all, from the civil rights movement to everything that Asian Americans were involved in this. And this is where it's just not even depicted in movies and stuff as well.
That's right.
How do you hope through this book and through this, your success as an author, that you can finally start to see a breakthrough in films and things like that?
Yeah.
With Asian Americans depicted more in
I think that things. I think for me, I am very conscious that I'm just one of so many people who have been working for not just representation, but again, as I said before, greater power and voice. And so my hope is a book like this for We Who Produce Pearls, that it will be read not just by young people, but by people of all ages, because I think it's a book that can speak to everyone and be a starting point for learning some of this history in a way that feels accessible and empowering for all people. And so my hope is, like, as we understand this shared history, we really find points of connection and ability to work and feel greater solidarity in group, but also across all groups, because so much of this is shared history. So much of this, all of it is all of our history. And when we understand how connected we are, I think that's when we can work, more powerfully for change. So my hope is, books like this and the other books that I write, in combination with so many other people doing work in film, in media, in news, will continue to shift this narrative towards greater inclusion and solidarity.